Let's talk Jake Paul versus Mike Perry, Mike Tyson's replacement. And to be honest, I'm pretty pleased that he's not fighting Mike Tyson. And yes, I know the fight's been rescheduled for November, but I'm hoping the fight never happens. Because when the fight was first announced, I was gutted that he was fighting Mike Tyson. And that's not because I'm not a fan of Jake Paul, it's just because I don't want him to beat a legend like Mike Tyson. It would be different if he was fighting a younger version of Mike Tyson, but he's an old man. The fight shouldn't even be allowed to happen. I know Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson was a huge event, and a lot of people will be disappointed. But in my opinion, Mike Perry is a great replacement, and actually probably a better fight. Mike Perry is a former UFC fighter, and has now become huge on the bare knuckle fighting scene. He's exciting, he's dangerous, he can punch, he's all action, and he doesn't mind getting hit. Unlike Mike Tyson, who hasn't fought for years, Mike Perry is an active, hungry fighter, so it's a much more dangerous fight. For that reason, I have much more respect for Jake fighting him over Mike Tyson, despite the fact that he's going back to his old formula of fighting ex-MMA fighters, having all the usual advantages. Fighting guys with less boxing experience, coming from other disciplines, and having the size advantage. It's just typical. Which takes me to why Jake Paul picked Mike Perry as a replacement. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel. I seen an interview with Jake Paul, and he said his team and Mike Perry's team have always been in contact. And in his words, that Mike Perry's been talking smack for this fight. He starts by saying that he's on a path to becoming a world champion, which doesn't make sense to me because fighting MMA fighters and bare knuckle fighters isn't getting you on a path to becoming a world champion. Fighting professional boxers and staying active and gradually fighting better opponents will get you there, not fighting MMA fighters. He said that he didn't want to wait till November and that he wanted to stay active, which is good, and he wanted to continue gaining experience, and that Mike Perry is good experience and good preparation for Mike Tyson. Which I don't really agree because Mike Perry is a completely different fighter to Mike Tyson. And in terms of age, they're years apart. He said that Perry has good power, coordination, and he comes forward. So you could say there's some similarities to Mike Tyson, but like I say, stylistically, they're nothing alike. He says that he just loves boxing, loves the training, and that he fears nobody. He also says that people haven't seen the improvements over the last year because he's been stopping people so quickly, and that he's got a new team. That he also takes boxing more seriously than 99% of most fighters, which I don't really agree with, but as a fighter, you've got to be delusional. So really, it's a good thing. Despite the fact that some of the things that he comes out with are quite questionable, I do believe that he takes boxing seriously. Because Jake Paul is the type of person, when he puts his mind to something, he's all in. It's all or nothing. That's how he's become so successful in other areas. Another crazy one, he said he'd be a world champion by 2025. I mean, the time scale is way off. And fighting Mike Perry and Mike Tyson isn't going to get you there. And to top it off, the interviewer asked about the PFL, and he went, yeah, I'm going to do that as well. I mean, if you want to become a world champion, you need to forget about anything else. He's not even close to that goal, never mind talking about PFL. I mean, I love the fact that he dreams big, but he takes deluded to the next level. Mike Perry is a good fighter, and one thing's for sure, he's hard as nails, and he's got good hands. But good hands in MMA and bare knuckle fighting compared to boxing is a completely different thing. There's certain things that you can get away with in MMA and bare knuckle fighting that you can't get away with in boxing. You can't punch as hard in MMA and bare knuckle fighting because you can break your hands. Boxers also generally punch harder because there's no kicking, no grappling. They spend 100% of their time on only punching. They also wrap your hands and wear gloves so you can punch a lot harder because your hands are a lot more protected. Whereas in MMA and bare knuckle fighting, because of the lack of protection, you're more likely to break your hands. Perry makes a lot of mistakes. He's got no jab. He stands square with his chin in the air. He doesn't move his head. That's a car crash waiting to happen against a good boxer. And a boxer in Jake Paul who's got power. And yes, Perry has got a good chin, but the power in boxing is just different. Just ask Francis Ngannou. And he's also in there with a much naturally bigger man. I do think that he can cause Jake problems, with his aggressive style and getting up close and personal. Because we have seen with Jake Paul in the past, when guys have been aggressive and got up close and personal, that he hasn't liked it. The problem is, can Perry do it? Can he get into range without taking too much punishment? Because he doesn't move his head and he hasn't got a jab. And in fairness to Jake, he's got a good jab when he uses it. If he can't do it, he's got a chance because Perry's got decent power. And we're also seeing Jake against Nate Diaz with a come forward style that Jake Paul didn't like it and at times looked very uncomfortable. The pressure just drained Jake's gas tank. For me, the only way Mike Perry can beat Jake Paul is to turn it into a dogfight. But let's face it, that's what he does anyway. And he says he doesn't mind getting hit. But I think that could be his downfall. Because like I've said, the power that Jake Paul possesses is completely different to what he'll be used to. Because Perry doesn't mind getting hit and has got a good chin, it can be seen as a strength. But let's face it, he's going to need it because his lack of defense and lack of a jab. And because of this, I think it's also going to be his downfall. There's no chance of him outboxing Jake Paul, so it's his only option. Get on Jake Paul's chest and let his hands go, and don't give him any room to breathe. If Mike Perry can't do damage early, can he do it for 8 rounds? Because he's not used to fighting over a longer distance. Whereas Jake Paul has done 8 rounds, I think 3 times, and he went 10 rounds with Nate Diaz. So he's been in deep waters and come out on top. Jake Paul and Mike Perry have also sparred before. And Mike Perry says that Jake Paul cut the sparring short. But I'm not going to go into it too much because I've said it before, sparring is sparring. It's very different with head guards and big gloves. It's all about can you do it under the bright lights. I think Jake had brought Perry in for the sparring. So the chances are Jake was working on tactics for his next opponent, whereas Perry would have been coming for war, trying to win the spar, which is 2 different type of things. And sparring isn't really about winning the spar. It's about learning and practicing new things and practicing tactics. So whatever happened in that spar doesn't really matter. Let's not forget, Jake Paul is a businessman first and foremost. So maybe he did take something away from the spar and believes he can beat him, because him choosing Mike Perry would have been well calculated. And don't get me wrong, it's still a risk because Mike Perry is an experienced fighter. Maybe not in boxing, but he's still experienced. In preparation for Mike Tyson, Jake had went up to 230 pounds, and this fight has now been made at 185. Jake was putting on size to increase his strength and power for Mike Tyson, so he was conditioning his body totally different, and now he's had to lose weight for Mike Perry. Could this play a part? Because Jake was preparing for a naturally much bigger man and someone who could definitely punch, but probably slower and less mobile, because obviously Mike Tyson is an older man and someone who definitely probably didn't throw as many punches. Mike Tyson in his prime was a completely different animal. But let's face it, Jake Paul wasn't preparing for a prime Mike Tyson. He was preparing for an old man. And there's no doubt that Mike Perry is coming to win. Unlike some of Jake Paul's previous opponents who are really just coming for a paycheck, Mike Perry is currently unbeaten on the bare knuckle scene, so his confidence will be sky high. And I think regardless, he's just confident. He loves the fight game. He loves the blood and guts, and he really hasn't got anything to lose, but everything to gain. I've got huge respect for Mike Perry. They don't make them much tougher than him. He's a warrior. But unfortunately, I think he's tailor-made for Jake Paul. I just think that he's up against it. Like I said earlier, he stands square with his chin in the air, he's got no head movement, and he's got no jab. You can't fight a more experienced boxer without a jab. You're asking for trouble, especially when you're in there with a naturally bigger and stronger man that can really punch. Perry just can't walk into range. I think Jake will keep it long, using his jab and movement, lots of feints, and I think he'll set traps. And because of Mike Perry's predictability, I think eventually he walks onto a bomb and it's game over. What's your fight predictions? Let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe and go watch this video next.